He stayed late to protect his empire, cold, untouchable, certain he owned everything that mattered. But when he heard the sound of a saxophone echoing through the marble halls, he realized he'd never own peace. The city below pulsed with light, but from the top floor of Ward Global Holdings, it looked almost silent, tiny specks of motion lost beneath a glass ceiling. Ethan Ward leaned on the edge of his desk, tie loosened, eyes blank as the numbers on the screen in front of him blurred together. He'd made his first million at 26, his first billion before 40. They said his mind was a machine, precise, unfeeling, brilliant. But in the reflection of the floor-to-ceiling windows, he didn't see brilliance. He saw fatigue. His empire glimmered around him like a cage made of light. A knock broke the silence. His assistant's voice followed, clipped and deferential. "Sir, it's almost midnight. Security's locking up. You should get some rest." Ethan barely looked up. "Go ahead. I'll finish this myself." He didn't tell her why he stayed. Maybe he didn't even know. The office at night was the only place quiet enough to drown out his thoughts, about his ex-wife's last words, his son's cold voice over the phone, the father he'd spent his life proving wrong. The sound of the elevator doors closing echoed like a period at the end of a lonely sentence. Across town, Isaiah Brooks tightened the straps of his old janitor's cart, humming softly to himself as he wheeled it through the glistening lobby of Ward Global. The tune was low, rough, like it had been pulled from a memory he couldn't quite shake. The night shift was his rhythm, empty hallways, quiet machines, and floors that reflected back only his own face. Most people never looked twice at him. To them, he was invisible, a shadow with a mop. But that was fine. Invisibility gave him space to breathe. He used to fill rooms with sound once, crowds, laughter, the breath of a saxophone melting into applause. That was another life, another man. Now the only audience he had was the hum of fluorescent lights. He paused by the top-floor hallway, gazing out through the glass walls into the city he used to dream of conquering. "Funny," he muttered. "Dreams can turn to dust, but dust still needs sweeping." His voice echoed, and he smiled faintly. "Have you ever worked so hard to build something, only to realize it cost you the parts of yourself that mattered most? Let me know in the comments below, what's your definition of success?" Back upstairs, Ethan rubbed his temples, frustration building as the spreadsheet refused to align. He slammed his laptop shut, stood, and stared into the dark window again. From the other end of the hallway, faint music drifted up, soft at first, almost imagined. He frowned. This building didn't do music. It was faint, low, but undeniably real, a saxophone, weary yet alive, notes blooming in the stillness like prayers whispered under breath. He stepped out of his office, following the sound. His polished shoes echoed against the marble floor, each step carrying both irritation and curiosity. As he neared the conference wing, the music grew stronger, melancholy yet defiant. It was real jazz, the kind you could feel in your bones. Through the glass wall of the grand boardroom, he saw him. A man in gray coveralls stood by the panoramic window, saxophone in hand, eyes closed. The mop leaned forgotten against the wall. The city lights framed him like a stage. Ethan froze. The janitor, his janitor, was lost in the music, playing as though his heart was the only thing keeping time. Ethan's first instinct was outrage. On my clock? In my building? But something in the music made him stop mid-step. It wasn't sloppy or amateur. It was haunting. Every note carried grief, memory, longing. The kind of pain money couldn't touch. For a long moment, Ethan just stood there, caught between anger and awe. The song ended on a single trembling note. Isaiah opened his eyes and froze too. The sight of the billionaire, tall, immaculate, watching, made his chest tighten. He quickly lowered the saxophone, shame flickering across his face. I'm sorry, sir. I was just. Ethan raised a hand, his voice flat. You were what, exactly? Isaiah swallowed hard. Just, remembering something. The silence that followed stretched like glass between them. Ethan looked at the instrument. You're a janitor, not a performer. Isaiah's eyes met his. Used to be both. Something in the man's voice, steady, dignified, unbroken, unsettled Ethan. Without another word, Ethan turned and walked away, though the music still echoed in his chest. Later, as Isaiah finished his shift, he looked toward the boardroom where he'd played. For a moment, he wondered if he'd made a mistake bringing his sax to work. Then he shook his head. Let them think what they want, he whispered. Some sounds just won't stay buried. Ethan didn't sleep that night. The sound followed him, haunting, beautiful, relentless. He had all the numbers, all the power, all the silence in the world. But that song, the janitor's song, had reached something numbers couldn't touch. He didn't know it yet, but his life had just shifted. The next evening, Ethan Ward arrived earlier than usual. No reason. No meeting. Just a quiet, gnawing pull he couldn't name. He told himself it was about security. He wanted to make sure there were no unauthorized activities after hours. But deep down, he knew that was a lie. He wanted to hear that sound again. The city dusk spilled orange light into the lobby as the last employees clocked out. Elevators chimed, doors closed, voices faded. By 8 o'clock, the entire top floor belonged to him. And the silence. He pretended to work, though his fingers hovered over the keyboard, unmoving. His mind replayed the memory, the janitor, the saxophone, the look in the man's eyes right before he'd been caught. Not fear. Not defiance. Something deeper, like sorrow trying to breathe. Finally, he rose from his desk and walked into the hallway. The lights above him flickered faintly as motion sensors reawakened. From somewhere beyond the corridor, faint music floated again. Softer this time. Careful. Secret. Ethan's pulse quickened. He followed the sound like a man chasing a ghost. In the boardroom, Isaiah Brooks stood by the window again, the saxophone cradled close to his chest. His cart rested by the door, mop and bucket in their usual place, his cover, if needed. He lifted the mouthpiece and let the notes rise slowly, low and mournful. The song wasn't one he'd ever recorded, not one he'd taught. It was a piece written in grief, a song for his wife and daughter, who never made it home one rain-soaked night 5 years ago. Every time he played it, he felt them closer, like he was keeping them alive, if only through breath and brass. He didn't notice the billionaire standing in the shadows at first. The song built in waves. Isaiah's body swayed gently, the notes curling upward like smoke. There was rawness there, a confession poured into sound. Ethan stepped closer, mesmerized. The music carved through the quiet halls, and for a moment, he forgot where he was. He forgot everything, deals, profits, meetings. All that remained was a feeling he hadn't known in years. Peace. And then the music stopped. Isaiah turned sharply. His breath caught when he saw Ethan in the doorway. The two men froze again, one holding a saxophone, the other holding judgment he no longer wanted to feel. Mr. Ward, Isaiah started carefully, lowering the instrument. I didn't mean any disrespect yesterday. I know it's not. Why are you here again? Ethan interrupted. His voice was quiet, not sharp, but Isaiah could feel the pressure beneath it. I work here, he said simply. And sometimes, I play. It helps me get through the nights. You bring that, Ethan gestured toward the saxophone, to work? Isaiah nodded. Yes, sir. Only after everyone's gone. Ethan folded his arms. You realize how that looks, don't you? Isaiah's eyes flicked upward. How does it look? Unprofessional. Disruptive. You're not being paid to perform. Isaiah's jaw tightened. I'm not being paid enough to live, either. The words hit the air hard, heavier than either expected. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I clean the floors of this building every night, Isaiah said quietly. Floors I'll never walk as an equal. The music's the only thing that reminds me I'm still alive. Silence filled the space between them, sharp, electric, fragile. For once, Ethan didn't have a comeback. His mind flashed back to his own life, his son's last voicemail, his father's funeral, the empty penthouse that smelled like nothing. He cleared his throat. That song. What is it? Isaiah hesitated, then looked away. A memory. A memory of what? Of who? Isaiah corrected softly. Ethan nodded once, the words lodged in his chest. When's the last time something stopped you in your tracks, something that reminded you you're still human? Share your moment below. Sometimes the smallest sounds change everything. The tension eased slightly, but only slightly. Ethan gestured toward the saxophone. You're good. Professional level good. Why are you working here? Isaiah gave a hollow chuckle. Life doesn't care about talent, Mr. Ward. Not when it takes everything else first. He looked out the window again, the city lights flickering across his face. I used to teach music. Taught kids how to feel through sound. Then one night, one mistake, and the world took my family. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The silence filled in the blanks. Ethan's gaze softened, though his voice stayed even. I'm sorry. Isaiah shrugged faintly. We all lose something. Some of us just learn to sweep around the pieces. Ethan stared at him for a long time. This man, this janitor, had said more truth in 10 sentences than most of his board members did in a year. Keep the instrument, Ethan said finally. Just, don't let security catch you doing it on company time. Isaiah blinked, caught off guard. You mean that? Don't make me regret it, Ethan replied, turning to leave. As Ethan walked away, the notes began again, slow, tentative, like the start of a fragile truce. He paused in the hallway, leaning against the glass, eyes closed. The music wasn't just beautiful. It was alive. It filled the cracks in him that money had never touched. He whispered under his breath, almost to himself, what am I even doing here? And somewhere down the hall, Isaiah closed his eyes, playing until the first light of dawn spilled through the window. Two men, separated by everything the world measured, now connected by something the world couldn't price. Neither of them knew it yet, but that song had begun to rewrite both their stories. The morning sun painted streaks of gold across the glass towers of downtown. From above, Ward Global Holdings gleamed like a monument to order, control, and power. Inside, however, something had shifted, something subtle, but real. Ethan Ward sat at his desk, eyes on the skyline, mind elsewhere. He'd spent the entire night replaying the sound of Isaiah's saxophone. He told himself it didn't matter, that it was just noise, but the melody kept sneaking into his thoughts, uninvited. He tried to drown it out with work. He reviewed quarterly projections. He signed contracts. He even barked at his assistant for bringing him lukewarm coffee. Still, the tune lingered like smoke he couldn't wave away. By noon, he gave up and stood by the window, staring down at the ant-like motion of people below. Somewhere in that crowd, Isaiah Brooks probably slept off another night shift, unaware that his song had cracked open something in a billionaire who'd sworn he couldn't be moved. Down in the service level, Isaiah was pushing his cart through a maze of polished floors and mirrored walls. He moved slower today, heavier. The permission Ethan had given him, keep the instrument, just don't get caught, kept ringing in his head. He didn't know if it was kindness or pity. He wasn't sure which one hurt more. When he passed other staff, they nodded politely but didn't ask questions. They never did. He preferred it that way. But deep down, Isaiah felt a tremor of something he hadn't felt in years, hope. It scared him. Hope was dangerous. It had teeth. That evening, Ethan tried to leave early, but something made him turn back. He found himself walking toward the boardroom again, the place where everything had changed. The room was empty this time. No music. Just the echo of memory. He stood there, staring at the window where Isaiah had played. The city lights blinked, and for a moment, Ethan saw his own reflection, cold, alone, and afraid to feel. "What am I doing?" he muttered. He wasn't used to this, to caring about someone who wasn't part of a deal or a profit margin. He walked out quickly, as if fleeing from his own thoughts. The next night, Isaiah didn't bring his saxophone. He told himself it was safer that way. That it was better not to blur lines. He cleaned in silence, humming under his breath only when no one could hear. When he reached the top floor, he noticed Ethan's office light still burning. For a second, he considered knocking, maybe to say thanks, maybe to apologize again. But pride stopped him. Men like Ethan didn't want friendship with people like him. They wanted distance. Hierarchy. Control. So Isaiah kept moving, mop gliding across the same floor Ethan walked every morning, one man cleaning another man's reflection off the marble. Ethan noticed him, though. Through the office window, he watched Isaiah pass, cart squeaking softly. Something inside him tugged, guilt, curiosity, maybe respect. He almost called out. Almost. But instead, he shut off the light and let darkness swallow the thought. Have you ever pulled away from something, or someone, just because it scared you to feel again? Tell me below. Sometimes the hardest thing is to admit we still care. The next week unfolded in quiet avoidance. Isaiah played less. Ethan stayed later. The few times they crossed paths, they exchanged stiff nods and nothing more. But tension hummed beneath the surface. Isaiah began noticing changes around the building. Security schedules adjusted. Lighting upgrades delayed. Small things, but all signed off by Ethan himself. One night, the head of maintenance, Mr. Rourke, cornered Isaiah near the supply room. "Brooks," he said, voice low. "I heard you've been getting too comfortable upstairs." Isaiah stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." Rourke smirked. "Playing music during shifts? You think this is open mic night? The boss might have let you off once, but keep it up and I'll make sure you're gone." Isaiah clenched his jaw but said nothing. Rourke leaned closer. "Men like you should remember your place." The words cut like glass. Isaiah turned away, gripping the mop handle until his knuckles whitened. He said nothing. But when he got home that night, he sat with his saxophone in his lap and didn't play a single note. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his penthouse with the same glass of scotch he hadn't finished. The skyline glowed beneath him, yet everything felt hollow. He thought of his father, a construction worker who died building towers like this one, telling him, "Son, don't ever let them look down on you." Ethan had spent his entire life obeying that. Now, he wasn't sure what up or down even meant anymore. He thought of Isaiah again, the music, the quiet dignity, the exhaustion behind his eyes. He didn't know why he cared. He just knew he couldn't stop. The next morning, Ethan walked into his office to find an email marked urgent. To Mr. Ward from Facilities Supervisor. Subject, Employee Violation, Brooks, Isaiah. He scanned it. Apparently, security had flagged Isaiah for improper conduct, playing music during work hours. Attached was a photo, Isaiah mid-performance, eyes closed, sax gleaming in the dim light. Ethan's stomach twisted. He could delete the report. He could ignore it. But that would mean acknowledging something personal, something that had no place in the cold world of business. Instead, he clicked archive and whispered under his breath, "Not yet." That night, Isaiah clocked in again, his saxophone left at home. He told himself it didn't matter, that the billionaire probably didn't care either way. But as he polished the marble floors, he found himself humming the melody anyway, soft enough that no one could hear. And from the corner office, Ethan heard it. Faint. Fading. But there. He leaned back in his chair, eyes closing, letting the sound wash over him. Something was changing, something neither man could fully name. But they both felt it. A quiet war between pride and longing. And neither one was ready to surrender. The rain came in sheets that night, a citywide downpour that blurred glass and neon into streaks of silver. By 10 p.m., lightning cracked across the skyline, and thunder rolled deep enough to rattle the windows of Ward Global Holdings. Ethan Ward was still in his office, of course. He had nowhere else to be. His phone blinked with notifications, dinner cancellations, market alerts, and unanswered text from his son, "Can't make this weekend. Maybe next time." He read it 3 times, then set the phone face down. The sound of rain against glass filled the room, soft but relentless. Downstairs, Isaiah Brooks pushed his cart through the echoing hallways. His shoes squeaked faintly on the wet floor, the mop leaving small crescent trails behind. The storm had cut out several lights on the lower levels, leaving him to work by the dull emergency glow. He didn't bring his saxophone tonight. Something in the air felt heavy, unpredictable. When the thunder cracked again, the building shuddered. The lights flickered, once, twice, and then went dark. Everything went silent. For a heartbeat, Isaiah froze. The backup generators should have kicked in instantly, but they didn't. The elevators stopped mid-floor, security panels blinked out, and the entire skyscraper was swallowed by darkness. "Damn," Isaiah muttered. He grabbed the small flashlight from his cart and flicked it on. Its thin beam cut through the dark, revealing long, empty hallways. He'd seen plenty of outages before, but never one like this. He reached for his walkie. "Maintenance, this is Brooks on 43. Anyone copy?" Only static answered. He sighed. "Guess not." Upstairs, Ethan's office dimmed to black except for the occasional flash of lightning beyond the window. His computer screen died. The hum of machines stopped. For the first time in years, the empire he'd built, every system, every device, went silent. He stepped out into the hallway, calling out, "Security?" No answer. Only the faint echo of his voice. He frowned, moving toward the elevators, and nearly collided with a beam of light. "Whoa!" Isaiah's voice broke the dark, calm but startled. "Sir?" "Brooks." Ethan exhaled. Relief masked by annoyance. "What the hell's going on?" "Whole grid's down," Isaiah said. "Storm must have hit the main line. Backup's delayed." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "How long till it's fixed?" Isaiah gave a small shrug. "Could be 10 minutes. Could be 3 hours." 3 hours? Ethan's voice rose, disbelief edging into irritation. "This is a billion-dollar building. We can't just. It's just you and me up here, sir," Isaiah interrupted quietly. "The world's not gonna end if it's dark for a while." The billionaire blinked. No one had ever spoken to him like that. They stood in the hallway, lightning occasionally illuminating their faces, the executive in his tailored suit, the janitor in his gray uniform. "Come on," Isaiah said after a pause. "Safer to wait it out in one place. The stairwells are sealed for now." Ethan hesitated, then followed as Isaiah led the way toward the staff lounge. The beam of Isaiah's flashlight guided them down the corridor, their footsteps echoing against marble and rain. When they reached the lounge, a small break room lined with vending machines, Isaiah set the flashlight on the counter, its glow spilling across the space. "Guess we're stuck," he said. Ethan exhaled and loosened his tie. "Great." Isaiah chuckled softly. "Could be worse. You could be mopping floors in the dark." For the first time, Ethan almost smiled. They sat across from each other, silence thick between them. Rain drummed on the windows like a slow heartbeat. Ethan glanced at the flashlight. "You always this calm when everything falls apart?" Isaiah shrugged. "Spent a lifetime learning to be." Ethan leaned back. "You weren't always a janitor." Isaiah's lips twitched. "Neither were you always a billionaire." Ethan gave a low laugh. "Touché." A moment passed, unguarded, human. As the storm deepened, Isaiah pulled a small thermos from his bag and offered it across the table. "Coffee. Strong enough to melt your worries for 5 minutes." Ethan accepted, curiosity overriding pride. He took a sip and grimaced. That's terrible. Isaiah laughed, a real laugh this time, low and warm. That's because you drink coffee that costs more than my rent. That drew an involuntary smile from Ethan. You're not wrong. The silence that followed was easier this time, lighter. Lightning flared again, revealing the exhaustion on both their faces. Ethan studied the man in front of him, the calm, the composure, the quiet strength. He'd spent his life surrounded by people who performed respect. Isaiah offered it freely, without fear or pretense. How do you do it? Ethan asked finally. Stay this grounded? Isaiah's eyes softened. You lose enough, you learn what really matters. You stop running from silence. Ethan looked down. I wouldn't even know where to start. Isaiah took a slow breath. Start by listening. Most men with power forget how. That hit deeper than Ethan wanted to admit. A long silence settled between them again, filled only by rain and the occasional crackle of thunder. Isaiah leaned back, eyes half closed. You know, storms like this used to scare me. My wife would always say, don't fight the thunder. Just let it pass. She was right. It always passes. Ethan looked at him, not as an employee, not as someone beneath him, but as a man who'd survived more than most could bear. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel superior. He felt small. But strangely, he also felt seen. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, two men from opposite worlds sat in flickering light, one sipping bad coffee, the other quietly humbled. The blackout stretched into hours, but neither seemed to mind. Something wordless passed between them, a fragile understanding born not from wealth or pity, but from shared solitude. When the lights finally flickered back to life around 3 a.m., Ethan blinked, almost disappointed. Looks like the world's turning again, Isaiah said, standing. Ethan nodded slowly. Maybe it never stopped. Isaiah smiled faintly. Maybe you just started noticing. Ethan didn't reply, but something in his chest eased. Later that night, as Isaiah packed his things and Ethan watched him leave, both men knew the power had returned, but something else had changed too. The distance between them wasn't quite as wide anymore. And for the first time, Ethan realized he didn't want it to be. The rain came in sheets that night, a citywide downpour that blurred glass and neon into streaks of silver. By 10 p.m., lightning cracked across the skyline, and thunder rolled deep enough to rattle the windows of Ward Global Holdings. Ethan Ward was still in his office, of course. He had nowhere else to be. His phone blinked with notifications, dinner cancellations, market alerts, an unanswered text from his son, can't make this weekend. Maybe next time. He read it 3 times, then set the phone face down. The sound of rain against glass filled the room, soft but relentless. Downstairs, Isaiah Brooks pushed his cart through the echoing hallways. His shoes squeaked faintly on the wet floor, the mop leaving small crescent trails behind. The storm had cut out several lights on the lower levels, leaving him to work by the dull emergency glow. He didn't bring his saxophone tonight. Something in the air felt heavy, unpredictable. When the thunder cracked again, the building shuddered. The lights flickered, once, twice, and then went dark. Everything went silent. For a heartbeat, Isaiah froze. The backup generators should have kicked in instantly, but they didn't. The elevators stopped mid-floor, security panels blinked out, and the entire skyscraper was swallowed by darkness. Damn, Isaiah muttered. He grabbed the small flashlight from his cart and flicked it on. Its thin beam cut through the dark, revealing long, empty hallways. He'd seen plenty of outages before, but never one like this. He reached for his walkie. Maintenance, this is Brooks on 43. Anyone copy? Only static answered. He sighed. Guess not. Upstairs, Ethan's office dimmed to black except for the occasional flash of lightning beyond the window. His computer screen died. The hum of machines stopped. For the first time in years, the empire he'd built, every system, every device, went silent. He stepped out into the hallway, calling out, "Security?" No answer. Only the faint echo of his voice. He frowned, moving toward the elevators, and nearly collided with a beam of light. Whoa! Isaiah's voice broke the dark, calm but startled. Sir? Brooks. Ethan exhaled. Relief masked by annoyance. What the hell's going on? Whole grid's down, Isaiah said. Storm must have hit the main line. Backup's delayed. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. How long till it's fixed? Isaiah gave a small shrug. Could be 10 minutes. Could be 3 hours. 3 hours? Ethan's voice rose, disbelief edging into irritation. This is $1 billion building. We can't just. It's just you and me up here, sir, Isaiah interrupted quietly. The world's not gonna end if it's dark for a while. The billionaire blinked. No one had ever spoken to him like that. They stood in the hallway, lightning occasionally illuminating their faces, the executive in his tailored suit, the janitor in his gray uniform. Come on, Isaiah said after a pause. Safer to wait it out in one place. The stairwells are sealed for now. Ethan hesitated, then followed as Isaiah led the way toward the staff lounge. The beam of Isaiah's flashlight guided them down the corridor, their footsteps echoing against marble and rain. When they reached the lounge, a small break room lined with vending machines, Isaiah set the flashlight on the counter, its glow spilling across the space. Guess we're stuck, he said. Ethan exhaled and loosened his tie. Great. Isaiah chuckled softly. Could be worse. You could be mopping floors in the dark. For the first time, Ethan almost smiled. They sat across from each other, silence thick between them. Rain drummed on the windows like a slow heartbeat. Ethan glanced at the flashlight. You always this calm when everything falls apart? Isaiah shrugged. Spent a lifetime learning to be. Ethan leaned back. You weren't always a janitor. Isaiah's lips twitched. Neither were you always a billionaire. Ethan gave a low laugh. Touché. A moment passed, unguarded, human. As the storm deepened, Isaiah pulled a small thermos from his bag and offered it across the table. Coffee. Strong enough to melt your worries for 5 minutes. Ethan accepted, curiosity overriding pride. He took a sip and grimaced. That's terrible. Isaiah laughed, a real laugh this time, low and warm. That's because you drink coffee that costs more than my rent. That drew an involuntary smile from Ethan. You're not wrong. The silence that followed was easier this time, lighter. Lightning flared again, revealing the exhaustion on both their faces. Ethan studied the man in front of him, the calm, the composure, the quiet strength. He'd spent his life surrounded by people who performed respect. Isaiah offered it freely, without fear or pretense. How do you do it? Ethan asked finally. Stay this grounded? Isaiah's eyes softened. You lose enough, you learn what really matters. You stop running from silence. Ethan looked down. I wouldn't even know where to start. Isaiah took a slow breath. Start by listening. Most men with power forget how. That hit deeper than Ethan wanted to admit. A long silence settled between them again, filled only by rain and the occasional crackle of thunder. Isaiah leaned back, eyes half closed. You know, storms like this used to scare me. My wife would always say, don't fight the thunder. Just let it pass. She was right. It always passes. Ethan looked at him, not as an employee, not as someone beneath him, but as a man who'd survived more than most could bear. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel superior. He felt small. But strangely, he also felt seen. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, 2 men from opposite worlds sat in flickering light, one sipping bad coffee, the other quietly humbled. The blackout stretched into hours, but neither seemed to mind. Something wordless passed between them, a fragile understanding born not from wealth or pity, but from shared solitude. When the lights finally flickered back to life around 3 a.m., Ethan blinked, almost disappointed. Looks like the world's turning again, Isaiah said, standing. Ethan nodded slowly. Maybe it never stopped. Isaiah smiled faintly. Maybe you just started noticing. Ethan didn't reply, but something in his chest eased. Later that night, as Isaiah packed his things and Ethan watched him leave, both men knew the power had returned, but something else had changed too. The distance between them wasn't quite as wide anymore. And for the first time, Ethan realized he didn't want it to be. The next morning dawned clear, the storm washed away but its memory lingering like perfume on the city's breath. At Ward Global Holdings, everything looked the same, the lights, the glass, the immaculate silence, but beneath it all, something had shifted. Ethan Ward couldn't shake the feeling of that blackout night. The darkness had done what money never could, it forced him to see. He'd sat across from a janitor who'd lost everything and yet seemed more at peace than he'd ever been. Now, sitting in his office, the old melody played in his head again, Isaiah's song, slow and aching. He didn't have to hear it physically, it was burned into him. He pushed back from his desk, restless. He needed to know who this man was. So he called up a favor from HR discreetly, of course. Isaiah Brooks, he said over the phone. Send me his personnel file. No reason. Just, routine review. He told himself it was curiosity. But it wasn't. When the file arrived, Ethan opened it slowly. Isaiah Brooks' age, 48 previous occupation, music teacher, Lincoln Arts High School spouse, deceased, Brooks, Naomi, child, deceased, Brooks, Lily, cause of death, vehicle collision, 2020 hired, 2021, facilities department. Ethan's breath caught. Music teacher. Wife. Daughter. Both gone. He scrolled further, a note from the hiring manager, former educator seeking stable work. Highly recommended by community shelter. Ethan leaned back in his chair, the weight of it pressing against his chest. A man who'd lost everything now scrubbed the floors of a man who had everything but felt nothing. He shut the file slowly and whispered to no one, "God, what have I been doing?" That evening, Ethan stayed late again. He didn't expect to see Isaiah, but he hoped to. And as fate would have it, he did. Isaiah was in the atrium, wiping down the marble stair rails, humming softly. Not playing, just humming. The sound was faint but full of warmth. "Brooks," Ethan said, his voice softer than usual. Isaiah looked up, surprised. "Evening, sir." Ethan hesitated, then gestured toward the lounge. "Got a minute?" Isaiah studied him a moment, then nodded. "Sure." In the small break room, they sat again, not across a gulf this time, but side by side. Ethan cleared his throat. "I looked into your file." Isaiah didn't flinch. "Figured you might." "I didn't mean to intrude. Ethan stopped himself. Words didn't come easy. "You lost your family." Isaiah nodded, eyes fixed on the table. 5 years ago. Drunk driver ran a red light. Naomi and Lily didn't make it. Silence stretched between them, heavy and reverent. Ethan swallowed. "I'm sorry." Isaiah gave a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everybody's sorry. Doesn't change the silence when you go home." He took a slow breath. "I tried teaching again after that, but music felt different. Everything I played reminded me of them. I thought if I stopped playing, maybe the memories would stop too." He looked at his hands, calloused from years of labor. "So I cleaned." It was simple. Quiet. Nobody asked questions. Ethan nodded slowly. "And the sax?" Isaiah chuckled softly. "That was my daughter's favorite sound. She'd dance around the living room every time I practiced. One night, after I lost them, I dreamed she was standing there again, asking why I'd stopped playing. So I picked it up again." His eyes glistened. "Every note I play now? It's for her." Ethan stared at him, moved beyond words. "You've been carrying that alone all this time." Isaiah met his gaze. "Don't we all?" For the first time, Ethan didn't hide. He leaned back, eyes heavy with memory. "My wife left 2 years ago. Said she couldn't live with a ghost who thought money could replace love. My son barely speaks to me. I built this empire so no one could ever make me feel small again, and somehow I built it out of everything that was small: kindness, patience, time." He laughed bitterly. "Guess we both lost something we can't buy back." Isaiah nodded quietly. "The difference is, you can still fix yours." Ethan blinked. "You think so?" "I know so," Isaiah said simply. "You're still breathing. That means you still get to choose." The room was silent for a long time. Rain tapped lightly on the windows, not a storm, just a reminder of it. Then Ethan asked softly, "What's the name of the song you played that first night?" Isaiah's lips curved. "It doesn't have one. It's just them. My wife. My girl. It's every word I never said." "Would you ever play it again?" Ethan asked. Isaiah looked surprised. "Here? Yes. Here. Maybe for something real this time." Isaiah frowned slightly. "Real? I have a charity gala next month," Ethan explained. "We raise funds for education programs. I want you to perform." Isaiah laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I'm a janitor, Mr. Ward. And I'm a man who owes you a reminder of who you really are." Isaiah looked at him long and hard. "You'd put me on that stage?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I'd be honored to." Isaiah didn't answer right away. He looked out the window, at the city lights he used to dream beneath. Then he said quietly, "If I play for them. Not for the suits, not for applause. For the ones who can't hear it anymore." Ethan nodded. "Then it'll be the first real song this building's ever heard." Isaiah's eyes softened. "You don't know what you're starting, sir." Ethan looked back at him. Maybe that's the point. Later that night, after Isaiah had gone, Ethan stood alone in the boardroom, the same one where the janitor's music had first shattered his silence. He looked out over the city, and for the first time in years, he smiled. Not the smile of a man who'd won, but the smile of a man finally learning to live. The next few weeks at Ward Global Holdings felt different. Not in the way of profit margins or stock fluctuations, those still dominated Ethan Ward's life, but something quieter had changed. Something inside him. He found himself leaving the office door open more often. He smiled at the reception staff. He caught himself humming Isaiah's nameless song under his breath, even during meetings. And every evening, like clockwork, Isaiah would make his rounds, mop in hand, smile easy, music in his soul. At first, they just nodded at each other. Then they started talking. And before long, those talks became the best part of Ethan's day. One night, near midnight, Ethan wandered down to the atrium again. Isaiah was sitting on a bucket, saxophone in hand, polishing the brass. "You ever sleep?" Ethan teased. Isaiah chuckled. Sleep don't pay rent, Mr. Ward. Call me Ethan, he said. Isaiah looked up, amused. You sure? Might cause a scandal in the Billionaires Club. Ethan laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. Let them talk. Isaiah nodded approvingly. Now that's progress. They ended up sitting together again, two men on the marble steps of an empire, talking about anything but business. Isaiah told stories of his daughter, Lily, how she'd once glued macaroni to his saxophone because she thought it needed sparkle. Ethan laughed so hard he had to wipe his eyes. You're serious? She said it'd make me famous. And maybe she was right. That little girl believed in magic. Ethan's laughter softened. My son, Daniel, he used to believe in me. I was always busy chasing the next deal. The next win. I told myself I was doing it for him. But truth is, I was doing it so I didn't have to feel like I'd failed. Isaiah looked at him quietly. You think it's too late? Ethan hesitated. I don't know. Maybe he's already written me off. Isaiah leaned forward. Then you write him back in. Ethan met his eyes, something stirring in him, hope. A fragile, unfamiliar thing. Later that night, Isaiah set the saxophone to his lips. Want to hear something? He asked. Ethan nodded. The melody that poured out wasn't sad this time. It was warm, gentle, alive. Like laughter turned into sound. The kind of song that made you close your eyes and remember what joy used to feel like. When it ended, Ethan whispered, That's beautiful. Isaiah smiled faintly. That one's called Second Chances. Wrote it last week. Ethan blinked. You wrote it? Yeah. Figured if I'm gonna play that gala, I might as well play something that means something now. Ethan exhaled, moved. You really think you're ready? Isaiah looked down at the sax, running a finger along its worn brass. No. But that's why I have to do it. For the first time, Ethan saw courage that had nothing to do with money or power. It came from pain, from the decision to show up anyway. That night, they stayed long after the cleaners left. Isaiah played, Ethan listened, and somewhere between the notes, silence stopped being uncomfortable. It became holy. The next afternoon, Ethan did something impulsive. He called his son. The line rang 4 times before Daniel answered. Dad? Ethan froze. Hey, Danny. A long pause. It's been a while. I know. Ethan's throat tightened. Listen, I don't want to talk business. I wanted to hear your voice. Maybe have lunch this weekend? Daniel hesitated. Why now? Ethan smiled faintly. Because I'm tired of pretending success feels good without you in it. Another pause, then a quiet, okay. Lunch. When Ethan hung up, his hands were trembling. He looked out over the city and whispered, Thank you, Isaiah. That evening, he found Isaiah in the lounge again. You won't believe it, Ethan said, grinning. He said yes. My son said yes. Isaiah's face lit up. See? Told you. All you needed was a little courage. Ethan laughed. And a push from a janitor with a saxophone. Isaiah shrugged modestly. We all push someone eventually. You just gotta listen when it's your turn. For the next few nights, Isaiah practiced after his shift, filling the empty skyscraper with music. Ethan often stayed just to listen. Sometimes they'd talk between songs. Sometimes they wouldn't. The music said what words couldn't. Funny thing, Isaiah said one night, I used to think I'd never play again. But every time I see you sitting there listening, I remember why I started. You remind me that people can change. Ethan smiled softly. You make me believe it's possible. By the 3rd week, word had spread about the upcoming Ward Foundation Gala. Invitations went out. Donors buzzed. But only 2 people knew what was truly going to happen that night, the billionaire and the janitor. Isaiah's name wasn't on the program. Ethan wanted it that way, to surprise everyone. You sure about this? Isaiah asked on the final rehearsal night. These people, they see a black janitor on stage, they're gonna have opinions. Ethan's eyes hardened with conviction. Then they'll learn something about value tonight. I'm not hiding you, Isaiah. I'm honoring you. Isaiah looked at him long and deep. You know, you keep talking like that, and people might start thinking you have a heart. Ethan laughed. Don't ruin my reputation. As they packed up, Isaiah said quietly, You've changed, Ethan. Ethan tilted his head. How so? You listen now. That simple statement hit harder than any applause ever could. Outside, the sky was clear, a crisp autumn evening, city lights shimmering like reflections of heaven. Isaiah took a long breath, looking up. You feel that? What? Ethan asked. Peace. Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah. I think I do. For a long moment, neither man spoke. They just stood there, watching the stars fight through the city haze. 2 men who had lost everything, now finding, in each other, the smallest pieces of what they'd both been missing. What would you do if life gave you a second chance, with someone you thought was gone forever? Would you take it, or walk away again? Tell me below. The night of the Ward Foundation Gala shimmered with golden arrogance. The ballroom glowed beneath crystal chandeliers, the air thick with perfume, champagne, and quiet judgment. Hundreds of suits and sequin dresses filled the space, murmuring beneath the soft hum of violins. Cameras flashed. Waiters glided. It was the kind of night Ethan Ward used to live for. But not tonight. Tonight, he had a plan, one that wasn't in any press release. From the balcony above the crowd, Isaiah Brooks adjusted his tie nervously. He'd borrowed the suit from the company closet, one used for security staff. It didn't quite fit, but it was clean, and tonight that was enough. He ran a trembling hand over the saxophone in its case. The instrument looked almost regal under the ballroom lights, a quiet rebellion against the room's perfection. Ethan approached from behind. "You ready?" Isaiah gave a shaky laugh. "Ask me in 10 minutes. Ethan smiled. "You'll be fine. Just remember what you told me, play for them." Isaiah met his gaze. "No, Mr. Ward. I'm playing for her." Ethan nodded solemnly. "Then she's about to be proud." Down below, the master of ceremonies took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the annual Ward Foundation Gala, a celebration of innovation, generosity, and the pursuit of excellence." Applause swelled. Ethan stood at the edge of the stage, scanning the crowd, board members, investors, journalists, every one of them ready to be impressed. But not moved. He'd change that tonight. "Before we begin," the host continued, "our chairman, Mr. Ethan Ward, would like to say a few words." Ethan stepped up, his reflection gleaming in the polished podium. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady. "Tonight isn't just about business. It's about rediscovering what makes us human." The crowd murmured, intrigued. "I've spent years chasing numbers, but recently, someone reminded me that the soul of any company isn't its stock price, it's its people." He turned toward the side stage. "And tonight, I want to share the stage with someone who reminded me what it means to feel again." The audience straightened. Whispered confusion rippled through the room. Ethan gestured. "Please welcome Mr. Isaiah Brooks." Silence. Then, a single spotlight. Isaiah stepped out, saxophone in hand, eyes uncertain but proud. A murmur swept through the crowd. "Is that the janitor? What's he doing here?" Ward's lost his mind. Ethan ignored them. Isaiah took a deep breath and lifted the saxophone to his lips. The first note cut through the tension like a prayer. It was soft at first, trembling, human, then it grew, blossoming into something bigger than the room, bigger than grief. The melody soared, dipped, wept, and healed all at once. Every note carried the memory of love, loss, and the courage to start again. For 3 minutes, the ballroom forgot its pride. People closed their eyes. Some even cried. And Ethan stood to the side, watching the man who'd taught him how to feel again reclaim the world through music. Then, as the final note faded, a sudden voice cut through the applause. "What kind of stunt is this?" The words came from the back, Richard Cole, Ethan's senior board member, and longtime skeptic. His face was red with fury. "You brought a janitor to play at $1 million gala," he spat. "Do you realize what this looks like?" Ethan stepped forward. "It looks like humanity, Richard." "No," Cole snapped. "It looks like weakness. Investors don't come to cry, they come to believe you still have control." Isaiah stood frozen, eyes darting between them. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Maybe control's not what we need anymore." Cole sneered. "You've lost perspective. You're making a mockery of everything you built." The murmurs grew louder. Guests exchanged glances. Phones recorded. And then, the cruelest cut? Cole turned toward Isaiah. "What did he promise you, huh? A little fame? A promotion for mopping floors?" The room went dead silent. Isaiah's eyes hardened, but his voice stayed calm. "No promises. Just respect." Cole laughed. "Respect doesn't pay bills, son." Ethan's fists clenched. "That's enough." But Isaiah shook his head. "It's fine." He turned to Ethan. "This was a mistake." "Isaiah." He stepped back. "You wanted to help. I get it. But this isn't help. It's pity." The crowd whispered again, feeding on the tension. Ethan took a step forward. "No, it's not. I meant every word." "Then why do I feel like a headline instead of a man?" Isaiah's voice cracked. "I've already been broken once, Mr. Ward. Don't make me relive it for your redemption." Ethan froze. That's not what this was. But Isaiah was already walking away, saxophone case clutched to his chest. The cameras followed him. The murmurs turned into noise. And Ethan stood there, under the chandelier light, surrounded by everything he'd ever built, while watching the only thing real he'd found slip away. Backstage, Isaiah pushed through the service door, heart pounding. The night air hit him like a slap. He could still hear the applause that had turned into whispers. He'd trusted Ethan. Believed him. But in that moment, it felt like he'd just been used, turned into a symbol instead of a soul. He sat on the steps outside, shaking, tears threatening to fall. Inside, Ethan faced the crowd's confusion. He took a breath and stepped to the mic. "Tonight wasn't a performance," he said quietly. "It was a confession. And if you can't see the value in a man's heart because of his uniform, then maybe this company doesn't deserve to stand." He dropped the mic and walked out. Outside, he found Isaiah sitting in the dark. The saxophone glimmered faintly in the lamplight. Ethan approached slowly. "I didn't mean for it to feel like that." Isaiah didn't look up. "Doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what it became." Ethan's voice cracked. "You were magnificent. I wanted them to see you." Isaiah turned to him. "You can't make people see me, Ethan. They have to want to." Silence. Ethan lowered his gaze. "You're right." Isaiah sighed. "Good night, Mr. Ward." And with that, he walked into the city's darkness, leaving Ethan alone beneath the streetlight, a billionaire surrounded by everything except the one person who made him feel human again. That night, Ethan didn't go home. He stayed on the building's rooftop until dawn, watching the sky bleed from black to gold. For the first time since his wife left, he cried. Have you ever tried to do the right thing, only to have it break everything you cared about? What did you learn from it? Share your story below. The morning after the gala was unnervingly silent. No press conferences. No congratulatory calls. No noise at all, just the hollow stillness that follows when a man finally stops running. In the penthouse office of Ward Global Holdings, Ethan Ward sat motionless at his desk, watching the city wake up beneath a haze of morning light. He hadn't slept. His tuxedo still hung over the back of his chair, a wrinkled monument to everything that went wrong. On the front page of every business site, the headline screamed, Billionaire's Janitor stuns investors, Ward's charity circus backfires. He scrolled through the article until he reached the photo, Isaiah walking off stage, eyes full of pain. That was the image the world saw. And maybe it was the one he deserved. Down in a small apartment across town, Isaiah Brooks stared at his saxophone case. It sat unopened on the table, gleaming faintly in the morning light. He hadn't slept either. His chest still felt raw, his throat tight from the words he'd thrown like knives. Part of him regretted walking out. Another part, the wounded part, told him he had no choice. He'd promised himself never to be anyone's symbol again. But Ethan had been different. Or at least, he thought so. He rubbed a hand across his face, whispering into the stillness, "You almost made me believe again." Then, after a long silence, he opened the saxophone case and lifted the instrument out. His reflection shimmered in the brass, tired, older, but still alive. He touched the mouthpiece, then set it down. Not today. Ethan couldn't focus. Every word on his screen blurred. Every call he ignored. Every sound felt like Isaiah's silence replayed in his mind. He'd meant to honor him, not humiliate him. But good intentions didn't erase impact. By noon, he pushed back from the desk and left. No driver, no entourage, just him, walking through the city streets like a man exiled from his own kingdom. He didn't know where he was going until he saw the music shop. The same one he'd passed every day for 10 years without once looking inside. Today, he stopped. Inside, the shop smelled like varnish and nostalgia. Rows of instruments lined the walls. A woman behind the counter looked up. "Can I help you?" Ethan nodded toward a small stand near the window. "That record, Blue Hour, by Naomi and Lily Brooks. You know it?" The woman smiled faintly. "Everyone in the neighborhood does. Her husband used to play on weekends before the accident." Ethan swallowed hard. "He still does." The woman's eyes softened. "He's lucky to have someone who remembers." He shook his head. "I think it's the other way around." He bought the record and left quietly, holding it like a promise. Meanwhile, Isaiah walked to the community center where he used to teach. It was closed that day, but he stood outside anyway, peering through the window. The music room was still there, dusty, forgotten, but the old chalkboard still bore faint writing from a long-ago lesson, "Feel first. Play second." He smiled sadly. His wife used to tease him about that line. And then, for the first time in days, he whispered aloud, "Maybe it's time." He lifted his phone. His thumb hovered over Ethan's name, then withdrew. "No," he muttered. "He's probably moved on." But deep down, he knew Ethan hadn't. That evening, the city was drenched in orange twilight. Ethan returned to the office, not as a CEO, but as a man carrying regret like a second skin. He walked to the atrium, where Isaiah had once mopped and played and healed him without knowing it. He placed the vinyl record on the marble floor. It caught the light like a small offering. He whispered, "For what it's worth, thank you." And then, as if the universe couldn't resist symmetry, the elevator doors opened. Isaiah stepped out, janitor uniform crisp, expression unreadable. They froze. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Isaiah's eyes fell on the record. His breath caught. "That's Naomi and Lily." Ethan nodded. "I thought you might want it back." Isaiah stared at him, suspicion softening into confusion, then something almost like sorrow. "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't know how to fix what I broke," Ethan said. "But I can start by remembering who you are. Not the man I tried to show the world, the man who showed me what I'd lost." Isaiah said nothing for a long time. Finally, he asked quietly, "Do you even know what you did wrong?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I turned your pain into a performance. I made your story about my redemption. And I'm sorry for that." Isaiah looked at the floor, his reflection trembling on the marble. "You meant well." "I know," Ethan said. "But meaning well isn't the same as doing right." The silence between them wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, heavy, but real. Isaiah picked up the record and held it against his chest. "You really listened, didn't you?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Finally." Isaiah exhaled, shoulders dropping. "You know, my wife used to say forgiveness is like jazz, it's not perfect, but it's still music." Ethan's voice trembled. "Can we make some again?" Isaiah looked at him, eyes shining. "That depends." "On what?" "Whether you're willing to listen to the silence this time." Ethan nodded. "I am." They stood there, two men who had fallen apart in different directions, now meeting in the same middle ground of humility. Isaiah didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just walked toward the door, turned back, and said, "There's a concert at the shelter tomorrow night. No tuxes. No cameras. Just music. If you want to understand what it means to heal, show up." Ethan smiled, small, uncertain, but real. "I'll be there." Isaiah nodded once and left. That night, Ethan sat alone in his office, the record spinning softly on an old turntable he'd found in storage. The music filled the space, a mother and daughter's laughter captured in melody. And as he listened, something inside him broke open, tender and clean. Not pain this time. Peace. Do you believe everyone deserves a second chance, even if they broke something sacred? Why or why not? Share your truth in the comments. The next evening, the city was wrapped in a soft drizzle, not a storm this time, just a gentle rain, like the sky exhaling after holding its breath too long. Ethan Ward stood outside the St. Augustine Community Shelter, holding an umbrella and a box of pastries. He had no idea what to expect. Through the windows, he saw flickering light, folding chairs, and people huddled close together, not investors or elites, but families, veterans, kids clutching warm cups of soup. At the front, a makeshift stage had been set up. And there, under the glow of two hanging bulbs, stood Isaiah Brooks. He was tuning his saxophone, dressed simply, jeans, old sneakers, and that same quiet dignity that no suit could ever imitate. Ethan hesitated at the door. Then he took a deep breath and stepped inside. Isaiah looked up mid-adjustment. For a moment, surprise flickered across his face, then softened into something else. He nodded. "You came." Ethan smiled faintly. "You invited me." Isaiah chuckled. "Didn't think you'd actually show." "I don't break promises anymore," Ethan said gently. Isaiah tilted his head, studying him. "We'll see." The small crowd clapped as the host introduced the night's event, Healing Through Music. Isaiah stepped forward and spoke softly into the mic. "Some of you know me. Some of you don't. I used to teach music before life, took some things away." He paused, looking toward the crowd, toward Ethan. "But someone reminded me that what's taken can still be found again. You just have to keep showing up." He lifted the saxophone. "This one's for anyone who's ever lost something and thought they couldn't play again." Then, with one slow breath, he began. The sound that came out wasn't perfect, a note cracked here, another bent too long, but it was real. Every phrase carried the ache of loss, the warmth of memory, the fragile hope of forgiveness. The melody from that night in the skyscraper, the one that had started it all, returned. But this time, it wasn't a lament. It was a hymn. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. Around him, the room was silent except for the soft breathing of people who understood what pain sounded like. When the final note lingered and faded, Isaiah lowered the sax slowly. The crowd erupted in applause, not loud, but heartfelt. The kind that says thank you for surviving. Afterward, as people mingled and thanked him, Isaiah looked up to find Ethan standing quietly near the back, clapping softly. When the crowd dispersed, Ethan approached. "You were incredible." Isaiah smiled wearily. "Didn't feel incredible. Just felt honest. That's what made it perfect." They stood there for a moment, the hum of conversation filling the space around them. Ethan finally said, I meant what I said that night, Isaiah. I can't undo how I hurt you. But I can spend the rest of my life being the kind of man who doesn't need redemption anymore. Isaiah studied him for a long time, then said, You already started. Ethan blinked. How's that? You showed up, Isaiah said simply. Most people never do. Later that night, they stepped outside together. The rain had slowed to a mist, streetlights glowing like halos in the damp air. Ethan handed Isaiah the umbrella. Here, you'll need this more than me. Isaiah shook his head. Nah. Let the rain fall. I like how it sounds. They laughed softly, two men who once shared silence and now shared peace. For a while, they stood in the quiet, listening to the gentle patter of rain on asphalt. Then Ethan said, You know? I've been thinking. There's a music program downtown that's losing funding. What if Ward Foundation took it over, with you running it? Isaiah turned, startled. Me? Who better? Ethan smiled. You've been teaching me for months. Isaiah chuckled. You really think the world's ready for a janitor to run a foundation program? I think the world's overdue. Isaiah's smile widened. You serious? Ethan extended his hand. Completely. Isaiah looked at it for a long moment, then took it, firm, steady. Then let's make some music, partner. Weeks later, the Brooks Ward Youth Music Initiative opened its doors. Every wall was painted bright blue. Kids from struggling schools lined up for free lessons. Volunteers tuned old instruments. And at the front of every class, Isaiah taught the first thing he'd ever written on a chalkboard years ago, feel first. Play second. Ethan stopped by every week, no press, no cameras, just him and the sound of children learning to feel again. And on the first Friday of every month, after the kids went home, he and Isaiah would sit in that small room, side by side, saxophone and laughter filling the air. Sometimes, Ethan would join in on piano, rusty but determined, and Isaiah would grin. Not bad for a billionaire. Ethan would laugh. Not bad for my teacher. One evening, months later, they performed together at a local benefit concert. Ethan played piano. Isaiah played sax. The same melody that had once echoed through cold marble halls now filled a warm, crowded hall where people danced, clapped, and sang. The music had evolved, no longer sorrow, no longer guilt. Now it was life. When the final chord faded, Isaiah turned to Ethan. You know what this feels like? Ethan smiled. What? Grace. Ethan nodded, eyes glistening. Yeah. It does. As the audience rose in applause, Isaiah glanced upward, toward the lights, the ceiling, the beyond. Quietly, almost to himself, he whispered, Naomi, Lily, your song's still playing. And somewhere deep in the music, he swore he heard laughter, light, familiar, eternal. Later, when the night ended, Ethan walked Isaiah home. The city hummed around them, alive, imperfect, beautiful. You ever think about that first night? Ethan asked. When I caught you playing. Isaiah grinned. You looked like you'd seen a ghost. I had, Ethan said softly. My own. Isaiah chuckled. Guess you finally laid him to rest. Ethan smiled, eyes bright. No. I just learned how to live with him. They both laughed, the sound mingling with the rhythm of the rain beginning again, not as a storm, but as music. Thank you so much for watching this video till the end. If you enjoyed this one, you will surely enjoy the next one. So click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next story. And don't forget to subscribe.